Okay, good afternoon. So I want to spend a little bit of time going through how to use the computerwith.co.uk resources over the next couple of weeks. It's the same structure, as in you get a video that explains the code, you get the code itself, you get some K-Pride resources, you get a type race. Recommend probably not doing the type race unless you want a little bit of light relief. The most important thing for you will be these extension ones, because over the next 6 weeks or so, I'm going to give you some practice exam questions, self-marking, instant feedback to guide you through how to prepare for your paper 2 mark. Now, this week is all about question 1. These are the easiest questions, and it's often code comprehension, so very similar to the keywords activities in K-Pride. And I've given you 3 similar question 1 style activities. So let's start with the first one. If we do this weight on Earth one first, we've got some code here. Let's have a look. We're going to look for the challenges down at the bottom, and we'll write the answers in. This is very similar to a practice paper for a question 1. Okay, here we go. Write a symbol used for comments. We put a hash in. That's the answer. Write the identifier of a constant. The identifier is the name. Constants go right at the top. It's just a name for a value. So that's the identifier, and that's the value. That's the value, sorry. So if we pop that in here, we should hopefully get some marks. The more marks you get, the more that it should appear on your scores on here. Right, let's do one more. An arithmetic operator used in the code. We've got an asterisk here, which is multiplication. That should hopefully get us the marks. And that's basically what you've got to do. Everybody can do question 1s. It's code comprehension. If you are doing the keywords, code comprehension activities every week, that is how to prepare for this. So let's see. This one's a bit different. It's not write an answer. It asks you to fill in the blanks. So this is often another way of doing a question 1. So let's see what happens when we run it. We've got some syntax errors. Let's see what happens. Draw a circle with a radius of 80 at x is 0 and y is 20. So we've got 1, 2, 3 arguments missing. One of them is probably going to be a radius. One of them is probably going to be x and y. So let's see the function or the procedure definition of draw circle. So draw circle is defined here. X goes first, y comes second, then colour, then radius. The order that the parameters are defined in your subprogram definition must match the order that you provide the arguments with. So, enough of me waffling. The parameter for x and y come first. So let's see, x is 0, boom. Y is 20. And then we've got the frosting colour, that's the parameter for colour. The radius, okay, here goes. That says 80. Hopefully we should get the marks for that. Great. It's all about code comprehension. And actually, this ties in beautifully with what we're going to do for CT11 today. So this is a recap. So this is a little bit more like maybe a question 3 now. It's jumping up in complexity. We need to be able to break a problem down into smaller parts. It's only really questions 5s and 6s that involve reading from a text file. We need some practice on that. I do want you all to know how to use subprograms, so procedures and functions. So I'll ask you in a moment, I'll give some class charts positives to remind me the difference between a procedure, a function, a parameter, an argument, and a return value. So we have a problem here. The head teacher needs a sorted list of all the students in the school. We have a file with all the students in. That data is not sorted alphabetically. We'd like it to be sorted alphabetically, and the file name is this, studentdata.txt. What we've got to do is load that data in and sort it. So can we decompose it? Decomposition goes hand in hand with procedures and functions. If we can break it up into smaller parts, each of those smaller parts is going to be a subprogram. So we've said if this is what the program does, we should have a subprogram called read file, sort data, and write file. And that's pretty much our starting point to CT11. Load data, sort data, and save file. The parameters are the things that it needs to do its job. Remember, if we were doing this in Python, and it doesn't ask you to do this, but we define, go away word, there we go, don't want to auto-capitalize. We define load data, and we put in a parameter called pfile, so we know which file to sort. And here it's saying, put the data into that list, and it doesn't return anything. I think that's stupid. I think it would be much better to return a list from that file. But they've said they don't want to do that. That's fair enough. I think if you sort the data, you need to know the list. So it needs to know which list you're sorting. And you say the list of the data to sort. What does it return? It returns the list, but it's sorted. You get the idea. Describe what parameters you're going to need to pass in for this procedure or function to be able to do its job. So I've defined which parameters I need, as in what data I need to be able to do the sorting. I need to know what data I need to sort. Now we can do our procedure or our function definitions. I've chosen to do all of these as procedures, so there's no return value. So we'll define a new procedure. We define it by giving it a name. I hate that word auto-capitalizes, it's irritating. Sort data. If you have no parameters, it's just an open close brackets, but you do need those brackets. If you have a parameter, and I do have a parameter, you just put the parameter name in here. So if I'm sorting data, I need to know the name of the list to sort. If you've got multiple parameters, you just separate them with commas. So that's quite nice and simple. Apologies in advance here. When you get to the next part, the whole of this link has been turned into a link, and that's not going to work very well. So when you go here, it's got the rest of the sentence after the FFM. So I'm really sorry. You're going to have to get rid of that. And then you get the student data look. Got lots and lots of names of famous computer scientists. Your job, is start from a blank canvas. So I'll start with you. I'm not doing the whole thing. Not yet, anyway. It says lay out the sections for constants, global variables, subprograms, and the main program. Well, you're used to this now, aren't you, from all of your type race stuff? Let's see. Constants. Can't be bothered to do this all the time, so I'm going to copy and paste that and just change it. We've got constants. We've got global variables, subprograms, and main program. Again, you don't have to do this when you're writing Python code, but you're expected to do it in your exam. So that's why I'm teaching you this way of doing it. Global variables, variables that you can access from anywhere in your program. Subprograms, that means procedures and functions. And main program down at the bottom. All right. If it's an exam, you would tick this off on your written piece of paper to say that you've done it. I'm going to just highlight it to say that I've done it. Create the items identified in the table below. Well, this looks like a constant to me, so I'll put it at the top. Input file equals studentdata.txt. And that is this file here, the name of this file. Output file and student data, you just put those as constants at the top. Create a header for each of your subprograms. Well, you've done that already. I didn't do all of it. I'm not going to do all of your work for you. But in subprograms, we'll define, well, what did we call them? Let's go for load data. Load data required 2 parameters. And then perhaps the hard part is actually writing it. But notice it doesn't actually get you to do that. It just says inside load data. There you go. Okay, class chart's positive question. I'll pause the video for the answers. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't say inside load data. Why not? How can we make it do that? So we've had the right answer. Nothing happens because we're not calling the subprogram. I've got the subprogram's name, but it is not calling it. If you want to call it, you've got to put the brackets. But now we've got an error because load data expects 2 arguments, and I've given none. What on earth does that mean? Well, an argument is the thing that you provide as an input, and the parameter is the thing that it receives as an input. So let's say which file. The input file is a constant. Lovely. The list, I haven't defined yet, but I probably should have done. Student data is a list. There you go. Now it's calling it, now it's making it work. It's enough to get you going. We'll pause in a little while and go through activity 2 a little bit later. So I made a couple of changes since I've paused the video. Number one, replace the hashes with minuses. Also, this isn't a constant. I know for two reasons this isn't a constant. One, because it's in camel case, lowercase and capital letters rather than all capitalized. But two, it's going to get changed as the program runs, because it's going to get passed as an argument into load data, where it's going to be treated as a parameter, like a local variable. Load data will put stuff into it, and then we'll continue. So let's crack on. I didn't quite finish this, sorry. Let's see, we need to define a new subprogram called sort data. We need to know what data to sort, so it's going to be a list, and for now it's just going to be inside sort data. And save data, we need to know which file to save it into and which data we're saving it in. It doesn't matter which order you put these in, as long as it matches the same order as when you call it. If we don't put anything underneath here, we get an error, because in Python every line with a colon on expects a line to be indented. So that's why the instructions here have told you to put something in there. Right, let's see what we're supposed to do next. Again, if this was a question, it would probably be a question 6 in the paper. The hardest question, the only one that starts from a blank canvas, and the only one usually that deals with loading data from a file, although sometimes that comes up in question 5 too. Right, amend, that means change the load data subprogram to open the input file for reading. So if you can't remember how to do it, in the exam, you've got a digital copy and a printed copy of this. I like the digital copy because you can Control F and search for files, which reminds you how to open and close and read stuff. So let's try it, shall we? Load data. Right. We need to open the file. Again, if it was me, all the bullet points, I'd get straight from here. Put them as comments. You might even get marks for it. And it will tell you in the question paper if you get marks for it. So what are we opening? Well, I know that we've got a constant here, a global constant, but we're also passing it as a parameter. So I'm going to use that parameter. Open is a function that returns a value, which means we can store it somewhere. It's a file. Let's give it a sensible name. If we open something, we also need to close it again later. How do we do that? File.close. Lovely. Then read each line from the file. Strip off the carriage return data, append the line, and repeat until there's no more lines. So that sounds like there'll be a mark for each of these. It wouldn't necessarily be the way I'd naturally tend to do this. But I'm going to do it this way, just in case the mark scheme is irritating and you only get a mark for doing each of these things. So how do we read a line? Let's see. Dot read line. There we go. File ID dot read line. So file dot read line. Save it as a local variable. Remember, a local variable is one that you can access within the subprogram, but you can't access it anywhere else. Read each line from the file. Lovely. Strip off the carriage return character. That's because in here, if you read a line, it's going to include the character between the lines, a carriage return. So I'm going to strip it. I'm going to do it on a separate line just for readability, and so I can put a comment next to it. Line equals line dot. Is it strip or trim? It's different on each programming language, and I can never remember. So let's check. Is it strip Yeah, there we go. It strips off all white characters like carriage returns. And repeat until there's no more lines. So while not file.end of file. Let's go back to the file section. How are we supposed to do this? Oh, it just says for line in. Well, that's easier. That's a lot easier. For line in file. Oh, so much easier. There we go. Then what does it say? Where does it say? Oh, here we go. Amend it. Did it talk about adding it to the list? I can't see where it says that. Presumably we need to. plist.append line. So when we run, it doesn't look like anything's happened. But if we go to the end of our program and say print student data, we should now have all of the student data in there. Great. And we've now passed in the right parameters. Next. Oh, is that it? It's going on to a bubble sort. Why can't we do the whole thing? I want to implement this as well. Let's just do plist.sort. Doesn't actually tell us to do this, but I kind of want to do it anyway. File equals open p file. We have to open it in write mode this time. We have to close the file at the end. We have to iterate through each line in plist. Well, it's not a line, it's a name this time. And then file.write p file. This is almost going to work, but you can probably spot what's going to happen. Sort data. What are we sorting? We're sorting. Ooh, that won't work. But see if you can spot what the problem is. And then save data. Dave. Why am I writing Dave? Subconsciously thinking about Dave. Let's call it sorted from. Yeah, I was going to ask about this, but you've already spotted it. We should have a constant called output file. I don't know what the question said. I'm going to put it in as sorted.txt so I don't overwrite the original stuff. And then student data. This will have an error because it doesn't know what plist is. Just to prove the point that plist is not defined down here. Plist is a parameter. And a parameter is treated like a local variable that only exists within the scope of that procedure or function. All right. Doesn't look like anything's happened, but we've now got a sorted list which does not display the right thing. So I'll pause, class chart's positive, and see if we can work out what the problem is. So the first fix is adding on the carriage return character, like so. That will just, undefined variable on line 33. What have I done here? Oh, sorry, that goes as part of the parameter to write. There we go. That's fixed part of it. Now we've just got the file name again and again and again and again, all on separate lines. We're getting closer, but it's not right. Yeah, we're using a for loop to iterate through every value in our list, using name as the thing that we use to iterate through it. So name is what we want to display. That should work. Let's have a look. Yes, it's in order, all on separate lines. Beautiful. Okay. So activity 3 replaces this kind of lazy sorting. So if you're interested in how to do a bubble sort in Python, you've got all the code here. You can put this as part of a procedure. It's even got the same names in here. This is the code for how to do a bubble sort. Why? Because you keep going until you don't have to do any more swaps. You iterate through each item. You check and see if they're in the right order. If they're not in the right order, we need to swap. So how do we do that? Well, we save one value, we overwrite that value, and then we set the other one to the one that we saved, and we keep track of the fact there's been a swap. It's just what we talked about last lesson with the bubble sort. When you've done this, save the Word document and upload it onto the Halftime 8 Algorithms and Programming 8. The rest of the lesson, I'd like you to focus back on that extension challenge for the Compete with Code.uk question 1 resources, please.